Sahana Vavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryan Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Good. Welcome back to our weekly class on the Bhagavad Gita. Today we'll be finishing Chapter 3 on Karma Yoga. We'll begin, as always, with some brief recitation. And please be sure to read the meaning and then repeat after me. We'll start with verse 36. Arjuna vacha, atakena prayuktoyam, papam charati purushaha, anichannapi varshneya, baladiva niyojitaha, Shri Bhagavanu vacha, kama hesha krodha hesha, rajo guna samudbhavaha, mahashano mahapapma, vidyena miha vairinam, dhumenavriyate vanhir, yatha darsho malena cha, yatol benavrato garbhas, tata te nedam avritam jnanametena, jnanino nityavairina, kamarupena kaunteya, dushpurenanalena cha, indriyani mano buddhir, asyadishthanamuchyate, etar vimohayatyesha, jnanamavritya dehinam, tasmat tvamindriyan yadav, niyamya bharatarshava, papmanam prajahihyenam, jnana vijnana nashanam, indriyani paran yahur, indriyebhyah param manaha, manasastu para buddhir, yo buddhe paratastu saha, evam buddhe param buddhva, samstabhyatmanam jahi shatrum mahabaho, kamarupam durasaram. Excuse me. And that brings us to the end of the chapter. Oh, we are going to continue here, verse 39. Verse 39 was the final verse we saw in the prior class, which very dramatically described how your wisdom, including whatever Vedanta you've come to understand over the years, to whatever extent you understand your true nature to be Satchitananda, that partial understanding gets covered up. That's what Sri Krishna teaches here in verse 39. That understanding gets covered up by the enemy of desire. And he went on to describe the enemy of desire like a fire. And the problem with a fire is the more wood you put in, the more wood, the more wood the fire demands. The fire is never satisfied by any amount of fuel. In the same way, this enemy of desire within you, raga and dvesha, is never satisfied by any number of things you acquire. By fulfilling your desires, the fire of desire will never, ever be quelled. And that's why Sri Krishna describes it very aptly as an enemy, which is dushpurena, insatiable, impossible to quell. So we continue now how to deal with that enemy in the final verses of this chapter. And of course, if you're going to fight against an enemy, you should know where the enemy is. You should know the abode of the enemy. And that's what we see in verse 40. Indriyani mano buddhir, indriyani mano buddhir, asyadishtanam uchyate, asyadishtanam uchyate, etar vimohayatyesha, etar vimohayatyesha, jnanamavritya dehinam, jnanamavritya dehinam. So, starting the second line, asya adhishtanam, asya, of that enemy of desire, for the enemy of desire, adhishtanam, its location, its locus, its abode, uchyate, is said to be, the abode or location of the enemy of desire is it's located where? In the first line, indriyani, the senses, manas, the mind, and buddhi, intellect. The senses, mind, and intellect collectively are said to be the locus of the enemy, and the enemy of desire. And that's actually, it's very good news. Your mind, intellect, and senses are the locus of the problem, and that means the locus of the solution. Mind and senses, locus of the problem, therefore locus of solution. The reason that's such an important observation is, suppose Atma, your true self, was the actual locus of the problem of desire. The problem is Atma is unchanging. If Atma possesses, if your true nature, Atma, possesses the problem of desire, the enemy of desire, that problem will be there for all time. That problem will not be, you'll not be able to overcome that problem if Atma were the locus. Atma is not the locus of the problem. Your mind, intellect, and senses are the locus of the problem, and that's good news, because it's the locus of the problem and the locus of the solution. Sri Krishna continues, etaihi vimohayati esha, esha, at the end of the first line, this one, this enemy of desire, vimohayati, causes delusion and confusion for whom, drop down to the last line, dehinam, for the one with a body, for any person. So the enemy of desire, vimohayati, deludes, dehinam, deludes the one with the body, the one who is not just with the body, but etaihi, in the third line, the one who is accompanied by these three, indriyani, mano, buddhi, by the senses, mind and intellect. So accompanied by the intellect, mind and senses, the dehinam, the individual person, vimohayati, the enemy of desire, deludes that one. Jnanam avritya, having covered up jnanam, one's wisdom. Here we'll make one more observation. It's your wisdom that gets covered by the enemy of desire, not Atma. Atma, your true nature, is, because of its divine or transcendent nature, it's utterly untouched, utterly unaffected by anything in this worldly plane. Desire is part of the world. Nothing in the world can corrupt or affect Atma. Atma remains utterly unaffected. Right now, Atma is fully present in your experience. We've had this discussion before. Right now, Atma is fully present in your experience as the consciousness by which you know what's going on. That consciousness is not covered by desire. Wisdom is covered by desire. Atma remains utterly unaffected by that desire. Okay, we'll continue. Tasmat tvamindriyan yadav, tasmat tvamindriyan yadav, niyamya bharatarshava, niyamya bharatarshava, papmanam prajahihyenam, papmanam prajahihyenam, jnana vijnana nashanam, jnana vijnana nashanam. In a prior verse, we understood the locus, the abode of the enemy of desire. Now, how to destroy it, if the abode is the senses, mind, and intellect, is the abode, where do you begin? So we have a threefold abode, but there's a beginning point. And Sri Krishna says very powerfully here, tasmat, therefore Arjuna, and he addresses Arjuna in the second line, Bharatarshava, Bharata Rishabha. Rishabha is a bull. The bull of Bharata, of the land of India. So, O mightiest one, is kind of the sense of the word. O Arjuna Tasmat, therefore, Adau, at the end of the first line, at the very beginning, the beginning of your process of defeating the enemy of desire is approaching the problem, not the problem with the buddhi, intellect, not the problem with the manas, mind, but addressing the problem with the indriyas, the senses. So that's what he says here. Tvam, you, Arjuna, indriyani, the senses, adau, at the beginning, niyamya, controlling, addressing, restraining. So the first thing to be done is to control or restrain your senses. And the reason why we discussed way back in chapter 2, the whole problem of desire begins with the senses. You can't desire something you don't see, hear, taste, smell, or touch. Only when you see something can you have a desire for it, or hear, taste, smell, or touch something. Desire is preceded by sense perception. So Sri Krishna says here, the way to defeat the enemy of desire is there's an American expression, head it off at the pass. I think that's a reference to old cowboy movies or army or war movies. Head it off at the pass, which means you have to anticipate the movement of your enemy, and anticipating the movement of your enemy, get in front of the enemy before the enemy can cause havoc. Here, the enemy is the senses, sight, hearing, smell, and touch, And Arjuna says you control them first. And to control your senses means not to let your senses draw you in the wrong direction. Remember that karma yoga begins. Karma yoga has many elements or aspects, as we've discussed over the past classes. But the very beginning part of karma yoga is to exercise restraint over your behavior. And that is, instead of doing what you want, instead of fulfilling your desires, you restrain your behavior and you direct yourself not towards desire, but towards duty, towards dharma. You redirect your motivation so that instead of being motivated by what you desire, you are motivated by following dharma. So here the restraint is not to be dragged about by what you see, hear, taste, smell, and touch, but rather to restrain yourself and instead of pursuing your desires, to pursue what is dharma, what is righteous, whatever is your duty. So that's step one of karma yoga. There are many other steps, and we'll see some of that here in in the last verse of the chapter. We'll see that. So, and Sri Krishna now concludes this. He began with tasmat, that very powerful. Therefore, O Arjuna, at the outset, you must control your senses. Don't allow your senses to drag you about in the world. Use your will to restrain yourself, and instead of fulfilling your desires, follow dharma. That's step one. And that's the first step of overcoming desire, of overcoming raga and dvesha, and that's how Sri Krishna concludes here. He says, Papmanam prajahi enam. He tells Arjuna, prajahi, destroy. He, indeed, you have to break apart the words he and enam. Prajahi, destroy. He, indeed. Enam papmanam, destroy this sinner. And desire is a sinner in the sense that it leads you into sinful activities, into adharmic activities. Destroy this sinner of desire, destroy this enemy of desire, to use a word we used before. This enemy called desire, which is jnana, vijnana, nashanam. Enemies can destroy. Enemies cause havoc. And here, the enemy of desire is at the end of the fourth line, nashanam, that which destroys. That which destroys what? Jnanam, your wisdom, and vijnana, your ability to discern properly. They're almost the same meaning. Jnana, wisdom, and vijnana, discernment. These can be overwhelmed by the enemy of desire. Therefore, Arjuna, prajahi, it's a command to Arjuna. You should destroy. What do you, in Hindi mein? Maro. Maro, kill that one, remove that one. Okay, let's continue. Indriyani paran yahur, Indriyani paran yahur, Indriyebhyah param manaha, Indriyebhyah param manaha, Manasastu para buddhir, Manasastu para buddhir, Yo buddhe paratastu saha, Yo buddhe paratastu saha. Let me just give you the verse briefly, and then I'd like to show you something on the board. There's a sequence that Sri Krishna describes here. He says, Indriyani, two verses back, he talked about the three factors. Indriyas, senses, like sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. Manas, mind. Manas will say the locus of thoughts. and buddhi, intellect, the seat of your will. So these three things have been discussed, and now Sri Krishna gives some more detail about these three. That's the locus, the abode of the enemy of desire. So here in this 42nd verse, Sri Krishna discusses more about that abode of the enemy of desire. And then in the last verse of the chapter, he'll talk more about how to overcome that enemy. But here he says, Indriyani, of the three, senses, mind, and intellect. He begins by saying the Indriyani, parani, ahuhu. The senses, ahuhu, are said to be parani, high, lofty, powerful, superior. So the senses are powerful, the senses are superior, but indriyebhyaha param, beyond the senses, more than the senses, manas, the mind, is param, superior, more powerful. Manasaha tu para, but beyond the mind, more superior than the mind, is the buddhi, the intellect. And finally, yo buddhehe parataha tu, but parataha, yaha parataha, that which is beyond, more powerful than buddhehe, more powerful than the buddhi, the intellect, is saha, which he just leaves with a pronoun. You have to know saha means that, and by that he's referring to Atma, your true self. Let me go to the board just to make it very clear. The sequence of the three, where he begins by talking about the indriyas, the senses. Then he says superior to the senses is the manas, mind. He says superior to the manas, mind, is the buddhi, intellect. And there are different ways of differentiating the buddhi and manas. A common way is to say the manas is a locus of mind, of thoughts and emotions, and the buddhi is the seat of the will and the organ of discernment, organ of reason, is the buddhi intellect. He concludes the verse in the fourth line by saying, buddhehe para, beyond the intellect, is saha, that, and the pronoun that refers to Atma, the true self. So this is the sequence, and let me sit down and describe what he means by that sequence. So these four, the three, Indriya, Manas, and Buddhi, is the collectively is the locus of the problem. It is the abode of the enemy of desire. And here he is like giving you a map to the abode of the enemy of desire. You should know your way around and know the relationship between these different factors. And the term used here to describe the relationship is para. Para can mean beyond, can mean above, and here I've translated as superior. Superior in what sense? Well, it's not very obvious. When I looked into the commentary, I've been using the commentary of Madhusudana Saraswati, and he actually elaborates quite a bit on what do you mean by superior. He says, sukshmatvat, prakashakatvat, vyapakatvat. He gives three reasons, three ways in which one is superior to the other. He says they are superior in terms of being subtle, in terms of being intelligent, and in terms of being all-pervasive. He's being a little technical, but let me explain what he means. The indriyas are least subtle because they're most connected to the physical body. Subtle means non-physical. So the indriyas are most connected to the physical body. The mind is less so. The buddhi is much less so. And the Atma has no direct connection to the body whatsoever. So increasingly, the sequence is being removed from physicality. And removed from physicality means removed from the world, transcending the world. So you can think of the sequence from Indriya, Manas, Buddhi to Atma as a sequence of going from worldly to otherworldly. Also, he described that as a sequence of intelligence. The Indriyas being the least intelligent, mind being more intelligent, Buddhi being more intelligent, Atma, consciousness. Without consciousness, there'd be no sentiency. Without sentiency, there'd be no intelligence whatsoever. So in that sense also, there's a sequence of one being more intelligent than another. The commentator also says they also are in increasing all-pervasiveness. It means each one is less limited than the other. Indriyas are confined to your body. The mind and intellect are less confined by your body. After all, when you sleep, your mind and intellect can go traveling the cosmos. In a dream, you can place yourself anywhere. And Atma, of course, is all-pervasive, pervades the universe. So in these ways, a little bit technical, his discussion, in these ways, we have this progression of, I think the simplest way of understanding it is they are increasingly otherworldly. The indriyas, senses, connect us to the world most strongly. Mind, less so. Buddhi, even less so. And Atma completely transcends the world. And the reason to make this distinction, you'll see what he says in the final verse. He's going to show you why these relationships are important. Let's see that. Sorry, and this is I pushed the wrong button. This is the final verse of the, there we go. I'm pushing all wrong buttons. Final verse of the chapter. Evam buddhi param buddhva, evam buddhi param buddhva, samstabhyatmanam atmana, samstabhyatmanam atmana, jahi shatrum mahabaho, jahi shatrum mahabaho, kamarupam durasaram, kamarupam durasaram. Evam, thus, buddhva, having understood that which is param, beyond, superior to, buddhehe, superior to the buddhi, beyond the buddhi. What is superior to the buddhi? Above the buddhi is Atma, the true self. So here he says, buddhva, understanding, knowing that which is buddhehe param, that which is beyond the intellect, knowing your true nature, Atma, as Satchitananda, knowing that true self, Atma, samstabhya, establishing yourself, fixing yourself. Samstabhya atmanam. And here atmanam, samstabhya atmanam atmana. This is tricky. Atmanam atmana, samstabhya. Samstabhya, establishing, atmanam, establishing yourself in Atma, atmana, by means of Atma. And that doesn't, on the surface it doesn't make sense unless you recall that Atma has several meanings. So the first Atma here means your true self, Satchitananda Atma. The second Atma here, Atmana, by yourself, by means of Atma. Here, that second Atma really refers to the mind and intellect. Atma can and often does mean mind and intellect. So here, establishing yourself in your true self by means of your mind and intellect. I'm being a little fussy in my translation. I'll paraphrase the first two quarters of this verse, and then we need to talk about this. He's describing perhaps like a meditation practice. Let me describe it. So he says, first, buddhehi param buddhva, recognizing your true nature, which is beyond the senses, beyond the mind, beyond the intellect, recognizing your true nature as Satchitananda Atma. And what do we mean by Satchitananda Atma? Let's use some more experiential terms, so we're not off in some abstract land of concepts. So experientially, Satchitananda Atma means what? Chit, consciousness, the consciousness present in your experience right now, the consciousness by which you know what's happening in your mind. That consciousness is Sat. It is unborn, uncreated, unchanging, and it is Ananda, absolutely untouched by all the problems of the world, unscathed by all worldly problems. Your own consciousness. That's what's loosely called the inner divinity. So that inner divinity, that Satchitananda Atma Buddhva, having discovered your true self to be that uncreated, unscathed consciousness. How's that? Uncreated, unscathed consciousness. Uncreated, Sat, unscathed, Ananda, consciousness, Chit. Having discovered your true divine nature, samstabhya, and establishing Atmanam, establishing yourself in that true self, Atmana, by means of your mind, by means of that understanding, by means of your recognition of your true nature. Now, put it in context. He's talking about, when he uses the word samstabhya, literally establishing or fixing, what he's talking about is where you fix your attention. You can shift your attention. Right now your attention is on me. If you want, you can shift your attention someplace else. We have this power to shift our attention. Here, he's describing a process of shifting your attention first away from your senses, then shifting your attention away from your manas, mind. You can see the process here. You shift away from the indriyas, the senses. You shift away from the manas, mind, thoughts and emotions. You shift away from buddhi, intellect, this discernment power you have. And finally, you establish your attention on Atma, the true self, the inner divinity. Samstabhya here means establishing yourself. My translation is steadying yourself. This translation I did decades ago, so I would do it, I would probably translate it differently today. Establishing yourself in your true self. Now, what exactly does that mean? You can kind of get it in the sense of a meditation. So in meditation, you close your eyes, you sit in a quiet place, restraining your indriyas, your senses. Then you do some kind of meditative practice to quiet your mind, manas. And then you use other techniques, like we won't have a whole meditation session here, to transcend even buddhi And transcending buddhi, for those who have meditated a lot, means when your ego undergoes resolution. It's really when you achieve samadhi, when your sense of being the meditator goes away, your buddhi is transcended, and you rest in your true self, Atma. To rest in your true self, to abide in your true self, Atma, means what? Atma is beyond the senses, so you have no connection to the external world. Atma is beyond the manas, mind, so there's no interaction with thoughts and emotions. They're left behind. Buddhi is the seat of the will. Let me use another term here. Seat of individuality, seat of the ahankara, the ego, the sense of individuality. Even that is transcended. The sense of being a thinker, a walker, a talker. The sense of being a doctor, a mother, a husband, whoever, whatever is your role in life. All of that has its locus in the buddhi. Transcending all of that, you arrive at your true self. You arrive at your true self, Atma, when the functions of your indriyas, manas, and buddhi, when they cease to function whatsoever, when they become perfectly still, perfectly silent, then all that's left is Atma. That's what it means to abide in yourself. To abide in yourself simply means to be free from the distractions of the senses, free from the distractions of thoughts and emotions, manas, free from the distractions of your individuality in the buddhi. When you're free from all those distractions, you naturally and effortlessly abide in your true self, Atma, which is, what did I say? Uncreated, unscathed consciousness. You don't have to reach anything. You don't have to accomplish anything. You don't have to undergo any kind of transformation. It's simply a matter of becoming free from these distractions. And these distractions are removed by making your mind quiet through practicing a meditation technique. So you arrive at your true self, Atma, and to lead into the last half of the verse, that Atma is innately free from desire. Atma has no desires. Desires arise with regard to your indriyas, manas, and buddhi. Your senses you see something desirable. Your manas has the sense of attraction, and the buddhi says, I want it. So this whole process of desire, seeing it, feeling a sense of want, manas, and saying, I want it, that decision is in the buddhi. That whole process of desiring something belongs to the indriyas, manas, and buddhi. Desiring does not belong to Atma. Atma is desireless. Atma is full and complete. Atma is divine. Atma is then free from desire. So here Sri Krishna describes a technique for overcoming the enemy of desire. And the technique he prescribes here, of course, remember the whole chapter has been on karma yoga, and karma yoga is a whole set of principles and practices which help you gradually overcome the problem of desire, the problem of raga dvesha. But here, as he concludes the chapter, he takes a very different approach, more of a meditative approach, by saying that you can destroy, he concludes, in the third line, Mahabaho, O mighty armed Arjuna, O mighty Arjuna, Jahi Shatrum, destroy this enemy. Jahi Shatrum. Kamarupam, this enemy which is kamarupam in the form of desire, in the form of raga dvesha, this enemy which is durasaram, which is difficult to conquer. It's a formidable enemy, a very threatening enemy, a very powerful enemy. So, Jahi Shatrum Mahabahu, destroy this enemy of desire. And how is the enemy of desire destroyed? At two levels. One is, this whole chapter has been focused on karma yoga, which is the gradual process of weakening raga dvesha by shifting your motivation in life, shifting your motivation from the conventional motivation of chasing after whatever you want, raga, and running away from whatever you don't want, dvesha, shifting away from that conventional motivation and reorienting yourself to be motivated to follow dharma instead, to fulfill your duties, your responsibilities in life. And that can bring in a prayerful attitude, recognizing Ishvara, God, as the karma paladata, as the giver of the results of our deeds, recognizing that we are at best an instrument of action, but it is Ishvara, the God of the cosmos, who gives us the results of our actions. So that helps us develop a devotional attitude, a prayerful attitude, and further, by recognizing that whatever we accomplish in life, we accomplish with the Shakti, the power, the gifts given to us by Ishvara. All of this then helps us develop an attitude towards our ordinary day-to-day activities, an attitude which helps weaken the grasp of raga and dvesha. And raga and dvesha get weaker and weaker and weaker until they are no longer an impediment to your discovery of your true nature as Satchitananda. This is why raga and dvesha are a nuisance in a worldly sense, but they're a major impediment in spiritual growth. As long as raga and dvesha control your life, there's really no hope for spiritual growth. So the major impediment in spiritual life is raga, dvesha, and by using the techniques of karma yoga and gradually overcoming the compulsion of raga, dvesha, finally you become freed from that impediment and able to discover your true nature. And that's where we conclude the chapter, where he says, Buddhva, in the first line, having known, having discovered your true nature. He says, having discovered buddhehe param, having discovered that which is beyond the intellect, that which is beyond the buddhi is Atma. So he's talking about gaining enlightenment in this final verse. So becoming enlightened and shifting your focus to your true self, Atma, which is utterly free from desire. In this way, Jahi Shatrum, in this way you completely overcome. Maybe transcend is a good term here. He uses the term to destroy the enemy of desire, but the sense in this final verse is one of transcending desire. And having transcended desire, how? By resting in your true nature as Satchitananda Atma. Again, you don't have to reach Atma. Atma is already your true nature. Atma is already free from desire. When you recognize that your true nature is utterly independent of the senses, mind, and intellect. Let me say that again. When you discover that your true nature as Atma is utterly independent of the indriya, senses, manas, mind, and buddhi, then remember that indriya, manas, buddhi, that's the locus of desire. When you recognize that Atma, your true nature, is utterly unaffected by senses, mind, and intellect, you transcend intellect, mind, and senses. You transcend the abode of desire. You become free from desire, absolutely free from desire, no longer afflicted by desire. In this way, the enemy of desire is destroyed. And with this verse, Sri Krishna concludes Chapter 3, the chapter on Karma Yoga. Before we conclude our class today, you will remember perhaps from prior classes that from prior chapters, that we have this English version of the Bhagavad Gita, version that I composed, which follows the poetic meter of the original Sanskrit. So these English verses allow us to recite the English in the same way as we recite the Sanskrit. And it's a very pleasant way to get an overview of the chapter. So we're concluding our study of Chapter 3 now, and we'll conclude with this overview of Chapter 3, and we'll get the overview by chanting these English verses. The verses are also somewhat condensed, so maybe about half of the original number of verses are present in this English translation. Let me recite the first verse. You can repeat after me for the first verse to recall the style of chanting, and then I think we can continue to recite these verses together. Join me and do the best you can. So, listen and repeat. Arjuna said, if you think wisdom does excel, better than acting on desires, O Krishna, why then urge me now? To take part in this awful war, You may not remember that our study of Chapter 3 began with Arjuna's question. Let's chant together now. Join me, please. Your words seem confusing to me. They appear contradictory. Tell me truly the path for me, by which I gain the highest good. The blessed Lord said, in this world there are but two paths, declared by me so long ago. Wisdom for the contemplative, Karma Yoga for active ones, those who withdraw from worldly acts, yet continue to dwell upon all the pleasures they once enjoyed. Deluded they live in deceit, but those whose senses are controlled, who work remaining unattached, practicing Karma Yoga thus, such as they are to be extolled. Fulfill your duties as obliged. Deeds are better than idleness. Give up attachment, do your work as a ritual sacrifice. By sacrifice the gods are pleased. When pleased, the gods will strengthen you. Serving each other in this way, you shall obtain the highest good. But those who offer not their gifts, yet enjoy what the gods do grant, they are but thieves incurring sin, acting for their own sakes alone. All your duties you must perform without attachment to the fruits. Work instead for the good of all. Great people gained perfection thus. Many are they who emulate the actions of the wisest ones. So you should labor unattached, working for the sake of the world. All works are done according to one's natural abilities. Yet when ego deludes the mind, one thinks, I did it, I am great. But the wise know all actions are based on God-given qualities. Actions depend upon nature. Thinking thus they are not attached. Even the wise ones will behave according to their temperaments. To nature creatures all conform. Their traits can never be repressed. Likes and dislikes can both arise toward the objects that we perceive. Be not influenced by these two. They indeed are your enemies. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what is it that drives some people to commit a sin, even against their own desires, compelled as if coerced by force? The blessed Lord said, it is desire, it is rage, ravenous and malevolent, born of passionate tendencies. Know this to be your enemy. Even the wisdom of the wise is eclipsed by this enemy, a raging full intense desire, unquenchable like burning fire. Therefore, Arjuna, from the start, all your senses must you restrain. Destroy this demon of desire that robs you of your wisdom's power. There we have our overview of chapter 3. Nice to get the big picture. Sometimes what do they say? You can't see the forest through the trees. We get lost in the details and lose sight of the big picture. Anyway, nice to chant this together. Nice to get the big picture of chapter 3, Karma Yoga. In our next class, we'll begin our study of chapter 4. An announcement here before we conclude today, and that is for our local students, the students who live in central New Jersey, close enough to come to our ashram. You know that our ashram has been closed since over a year because of the pandemic, out of safety and concern for everyone's health. Well, we are finally ready to gradually begin reopening the ashram, and we'll begin our gradual reopening this coming Sunday. We usually have a weekly satsang program. Our satsang program is an informal question-answer session. And we've always had satsang every week. We've generally meet 6 p.m. on Sundays. So beginning this coming Sunday at 6 p.m., we will have a satsang session. To help us cope with this pandemic, we'll do several things. One is we're going to meet outside. We have a beautiful garden area and a nice area for us to be seated in the shade and have nice casual discussion. So we will meet in the garden. Of course, that means if it's raining or the weather isn't suitable, the program will be canceled. Later, we will meet inside the building, but right now we'll hold off on that for a while. So for the time being, we will meet in the garden. We'll cancel the program in case of rain. Also, several requests just to make sure everyone is safe and stays healthy. One is, if you come, you should be fully vaccinated, or if you're not fully vaccinated, you should have a negative COVID test within the past week or so. Also, you shouldn't have any symptoms of the virus, like a cold-like symptoms or flu-like symptoms. And also, if you've had any contact with anyone else who has had anyone else who has the COVID virus, if you've had contact with such a person over the last 2 weeks, you should avoid coming. So these are some simple rules so that we can avoid any possible health problems. We want to ensure that everyone is safe and healthy when we meet here. By the way, those rules, as it were, they're on our website. You can go to our website for that and all other program information. We'll also be announcing in the future other classes, probably in September. We'll introduce other classes. This Bhagavad Gita class will eventually meet in person on Saturday mornings in our lecture hall. We'll have other classes as well. We have a Tuesday Vedanta class. All of these sessions are scheduled to begin in September, and we'll announce when those new programs are beginning, but not for a while. In September, those new programs will begin. So those of you who live in central New Jersey, I really look forward to seeing you. I miss you. It's been a long time teaching to you via these YouTube videos. It'll be much nicer to spend time with you in person. Please come. Please come join us starting next Sunday at 6 p.m. for satsang. I look forward to seeing you. And for those of you who are continuing to study remotely, let me assure you that when we move to live classes in the lecture hall, we will continue to make these classes available on the internet. Nothing will change. These classes will continue to be available. Okay. We'll conclude with a prayer. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhaveta Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.